Hey Ian, how's it going? Not sure if you're able to talk right now or
I
not, but
sorry, I was muted, I think.
oh, you're good. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Where are you from, Ian?
I'm in Toronto, in Canada.
Oh, awesome. Our neighbor to the north.
Yep, absolutely.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining tonight. Since you're the first one in, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Is there anything that you want to get out of tonight?
Um, so I look at land, and previous to joining Sub 2,
Yeah.
I actually did a bit of work with Joe McCall.
Yeah.
So I saw your posting for your Zoom, so I just figured I don't have anything specific, but I just figured I'd jump in and see how you were handling things and what you do. Um,
Awesome.
I'm pretty new to Sub 2. I'm into
Awesome.
I guess, my third week. So, like I said, I was just kind of jumping in to see what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Love it. Welcome, Seth. Welcome, Luke. Fly on the wall for Luke. Sounds like awesome. Cool. Seth, how we
Hmm.
doing?
Doing good, man. Not bad for a Monday. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Seth, anything you want to get out of tonight?
Yeah, just kind of seeing how these are all going to run and ultimately, bring some questions a little bit later too. So,
Yeah,
you know,
love it. Awesome. Cool. Well, if you guys have a question at any point in time, raise your hand or type it in the chat here. I'll try and monitor that a little bit or as best I can. Um, and uh, and we'll get going. So cool. We'll go just we'll go straight to it if you guys are good with it. My thought would be that tonight what we kind of look at is kind of how to find off or kind of how to find like seller parcels. So seller listed parcels on Zillow and essentially kind of how to like comp one and trying to figure out exactly how to see if it's something worth actually taking a look at or not. Um, so everyone knows of lovely Zillow. So let me pull up my screen here. Awesome. Cool. Can you guys see that
It's coming.
almost. Yeah, I think
coming
it's
in there?
loading. There we go.
Okay. Awesome. So my screen's above, so if it looks like I'm not looking at you guys, I'm looking at my screen, all right? So, everyone knows lovely Zillow, right? And so Zillow's really good. It's a really good place essentially to find houses, find land, find any sort of real estate asset, really, or at least single family homes and land, particularly, which is what we're talking about today. So, I want to talk about kind of how to find the seller listed specific ones. So ones that aren't necessarily like agent with an agent or something like that, where it's more direct to seller. All right. So a couple different things. Let's find a market. Let's just say we're gonna go. Does anyone have a favorite state today? Throw me a state. Throw me out a state. What
Do
state
North
would you
Carolina.
go?
North
North
Carolina.
Carolina. Perfect. I love it. All right. Cool. So we're gonna check out North Carolina. North Carolina. Perfect. All right. Great. So now we have everything that's for sale. One thing that we want to look at right away is property types. So I'm going to deselect all those and I'm just going to turn on lots slash land. All right. So easy enough to do there. When we go to filters, you can see up here in the for sale where it says owner posted. So we're going to make sure that only owner posted is selected. Essentially, what that means is like if me or you or anyone else was on here and was like, I wonder, I want to just list mine on my own. I don't want to go through an agent, XYZ, whatever it is. You can list it on your own. And in this case, whenever you see owner posted, that's going to be no agent. It's just going to be direct to seller on market. So obviously a few different ways that you can go. You can go direct to seller off market, meaning that's not listed on any sort of platform, MLS, Zillow, anything like that. Direct to seller on market, which is essentially what this is. and then you have on market, which is like with a broker or an agent. All right. So listing type right under there. And then also too, I'm going to take, well, we'll keep the key coming soon. Wonder if accept, I mean, you can kind of toggle some of these if you want. Accepting backup offers. Looks like there's a few under contract. You can kind of see a few dots popping in there. Sometimes that is worth tracking those too, by the way. So contracts do fall through, things don't close. So maybe keeping pending and under contract on might not be a bad option as well. We'll keep scrolling down here to lot size. So generally speaking, I mean, you can look at whatever you want. I normally prefer that 1 acre and up. So I'm not going to have any max when I'm looking for this right off the bat. All right. Um, so you can go 1 acre, you can go 20 acres, and you see a lot more. Pretty much all of them disappear. There's still a few left. But let's just do 1 acre because that'll give us a few more parcels to kind of take a look at here. And then another really important one too is days on Zillow. So if you look at days on Zillow and it just says 1 day, I mean, that's going to be a very, very fresh listing. The seller might not necessarily be so inclined to sell right away, but if you have something like 90 days old or on Zillow for at least 90 days, what that tells me is that that's been sitting for a little while and potentially their motivation is higher. Now, I say potentially because it doesn't always mean that their motivation is going to be higher, but just in general, that can be a little bit higher. So if you have 90 days or more on market. So we're going to hit apply. And now you can kind of see where all of these parcels are. All right. For tonight, let's kind of zoom in. Looks like there's a few more parcels kind of in the western portion of North Carolina here. So kind of around this Asheville area. Maybe we'll focus in around there. Um, all right. So next piece of this is essentially just to pick one. Let's choose this $160,000 one. All right. We'll pop that one up and let's see what we got here. A few different things that I look at initially when I'm always looking at like the Zillow listing right off the bat is I want to see how long it's been on for. Of course, I chose a terrible one. It's 3 days. 3 days. However, look at how many views it has and look how many saves it has. So it already has 152 views and it already has 18 saves and it's only been 3 days. That's pretty dang good. All right. Normally they say there's a golden ratio. And essentially what that is 10% of your views should be saves. So in this case, 152 views means that we should have 15 saves. And that normally, again, not always, but it normally can be uh, an indicator of an area that's kind of hot and kind of trending in that area. All right, where things are kind of moving a little bit faster. So that 152 views, 18 saves, pretty dang good, especially for 3 days, which is great. So this tells me that this property owner probably is getting a lot of phone calls if it already has 18 saves on it. The next thing I want to take a look at, obviously, is acreage, but then I want to look at the photos. They have 46 photos. So what that tells me, and they have kind of this photo in here, I bet this person who's selling it, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, is probably a land investor, actually. However, it might be somebody who's out there. The main reason being is if you scroll up to the top here, you see this one, this photo right here, how it's kind of highlighted, kind of has like overhead view. That's very oftentimes pretty indicative, especially too, it has another little photo overlay on it right over here. Looks like actually a very pretty view. But this probably pretty indicative of it being an investor who's probably trying to sell this. Maybe they have it under contract and they're wholesaling it. But there's a lot of photos in here. Looks like yellow birch number 10, so it looks like it's possibly a buildable lot without even looking at the description yet. Here's another couple key things to take a look at. So you can see there's electrical box here, which means that there's electric on site, which is a good thing. All right, that is really good. That tells us, hey, this is could potentially be a buildable lot. You also see this right here as well, which this can be a survey stake. It can be a lot of different things, but it tells us so that somebody's been out there to go and take a look and kind of measure where everything is. Um, Let's see here. Here we go. Another really good one here. So this one has a well tag. And this just tells you, hey, there's a well on site. So when we start looking at this, we have a well, we have electric. It looks like it has some property lines already marked out. This tells me that it's probably a really good home site. And then here's a couple more of these, a couple more pictures in there. There's that same one. You can kind of see there's a house over here, a couple vacant lots in here. So definitely a really good home site. There's a GIS of it. Look at this. Nice little drawn out map. I love it. Love it. A little bit like a vineyard, solar green homes, some big waterfall. Very descriptive. I love it. Swimming hole. Looks like there's a cool little area back here. So, and here's looks like the whole subdivision that they're putting in through there. So this definitely is a buildable site. And this looks really good. Some it looks like some community areas, some nice viewpoints. So when we start looking at this and we kind of summarize it, we're taking a look and going, is this something maybe worthwhile, maybe worth something? Yeah, for sure. I mean, they already did a really good job of marketing it. And obviously it shows 3 days, 152 views, 18 saves. They did a really good job of marketing this already. They got some nice, pretty photos. Looks like the next piece I'll look at is when it was last sold. So it was sold in 2023 for $100,000. And now 3 years later, they're trying to sell it for about 60,000 more. Um, Previously sold in 2014. So it looks like it's changed hand a couple times, but nothing too crazy since then. So we start looking at that, then we'll look at the description here and just visually looking at it, a whole bunch of stuff on there. All right, we see HOA pops out right away. Um, let's see here, 25 minutes to Asheville, so that's really nice, kind of a larger metropolitan area. Let's see here. Yeah, build custom mountain home, quiet cul-de-sac. So this looks like something really good. The one piece, if you want to put like pros and cons, right, in terms of like looking at it from a land investor standpoint, or something that's potentially the ability to resell it or the ability to essentially figure out, hey, would this be a good one um, to try and do? You want to look at HOA. So $275 annually. Not terrible, not great. It does have an HOA. That is going to make a little bit more restriction. And some people, actually most people who are looking for land normally aren't looking for something within an HOA. Um, it is really close to Asheville, which is super beneficial. That's going to drive up the value. That's going to be a big value add. It already has electric on site, has the well already looks like potentially on site or around it. I'm assuming that's on site because it had that well tag on it. Um, so this looks like it's almost more builder ready. So it looks like maybe in the photo it has to be cleared out a little bit and then you can build your home on it. So when we start looking at this and we start looking and figuring out, okay, might this be a good one to call? I mean, yeah, certainly worth it. The one challenge is going to be the HOA. Not impossible, but might be a little bit more of a challenge. And really, when you start looking at these parcels, you want to think about what the end buyer is, who the end buyer is. In this case, the end buyer is either a builder or it's somebody who's going to homestead on it. And that's pretty much it. Doesn't sound like you can really go like hunting. Doesn't sound like you can do a whole heck of a lot on 1 acre. So it's not that that's a bad thing, but the more exits or the more types of people who you want, or who, not who you want. I mean, obviously you want a whole lot of people, but the more different exit strategies that you can have, the more variety and pool that opens up to, right? Everyone's familiar with housing. So think about it like the housing market, right? How many people can afford $1 million house versus how many people can afford a $200,000 house, right? The $1 million house is for a very kind of more of a select, more of a limited pool, right? Versus a $200,000 house, you have a larger section of the population who can buy that. Plus, you have the people who are in the $1 million category. They could potentially buy a $200,000 house as well. So when you look at land, you have to think of it almost like who's my end buyer going to be on this? And in this case, your end buyer is going to be somebody who's probably building a luxury home or custom home um, in there, and also somebody too who's okay with an HOA. Not at the end of the world. You also might be able to sell it to a builder, which is also really good. However, just limits your pool. All right. So, not inherently a bad one. Does anyone have any questions about how I kind of like analyze like a Zillow listing right off the bat? We'll get to how to kind of comp it real quickly on Zillow as well, but does anyone have a question about that? Nothing. I explained it that well, guys. All right. Cool. I see some smirks. I see some smiles. All right. Right on. Well, we'll keep rolling then. All right. So this is where R1 is. All right. Let's see if we can try and pull up like what a normal comp would be for this. All right. So it's kind of by this Girton, if you will, Girton, North Carolina, it looks like. So now what I'm going to do, all right, we said it was 1 acre. All right. So I'm going to go into my filters. I'm going to go down to lot size. I'm going to go half acre to 2 acres. All right, so I'm gonna go all of a sudden now I'm kind of gonna, it's called an acreage band. So it's what you kind of want to bracket. All right, so I'm gonna go with something slightly less and something slightly more. And we're gonna kind of see how much price per acre we can get. All right, so I'm gonna hit apply. Not gonna show me too much more, and that's okay. What I want to do now is I want to switch from for sale to now I want to go to sold. All right. So once we go to sold, all these yellow dots here kind of indicate essentially these lots that are between a half acre and 2 acres that have sold. And actually, we're going to go sold in the last 12 months. Ah, cool. So we can get a lot more data in there. Okay. So one looks like it's probably really close to where we were, maybe a little bit different in this Girton area. So let's just click on that and see what this looks like. All right, so a little thing off the phone. Kind of a smaller, a little bit different, kind of a long rectangular parcel. Not really sure that's quite similar. I think that's definitely a little bit different. It's right off a highway versus in a cul-de-sac, so it's going to be a little bit different in that sense. Let's see if we can find something else. Obviously, that's the closest one, so that's normally where I start when I'm looking at comps. Let's go out here kind of further up, looks like kind of windy road, so it might be up a mountain. Let's check out what this one is. Let's see here. Looks like it's a little bit more of a subdivision, maybe a little bit more cleared. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly where this is in this one. However, something though that maybe a little bit closer, but probably still a little, kind of a little bit more expensive. Let's take a look at this one. All right, Grand Highlands. So this is assumably probably in another HOA. Um, let's see if we can see anything in there. They all hide that pretty dang good here. Here we go. Property overlooks HOA green space, vibrant social scene. So this looks like it was picked up by a builder as well. And you can see it was listed for sale for 175 and they ended up closing at 105. So that was a big price cut. They got 40% off of what they listed at, but also too, 5, 6 of 25 to 26. So it took over a year to sell. So that would explain why it was so high. And really, actually, it looks like they originally listed it back in 2024. Oof, that's a long time, 2 years to try and sell that land. But this one looks like it might be a really close comp, a little bit smaller of a lot. They want to kind of take a look at. Let's keep looking around here. Ooh, this one. Does that look AI to you, or does that look like it's actually real to you guys? You guys see that?
Kind of hard to tell.
It is kind of hard to tell. I feel like it looks like AI. If it's not, like, take me
Hmm.
there. I want to move there.
It looks like it's a bunch of like golf cart paths around there.
Right? I know it looks like it's like these beautiful little paved like golf cart path roads. I'm assuming this mark over here means that it's AI, but I could be totally wrong. Let's check it out. Oh, maybe it's not. That's pretty cool. So you can kind of see the lot here. A little bit, maybe a little bit different in that sense. Yeah, maybe that's not. Man, that's gorgeous up through there. So cool. Very cool lot that you guys can see. So 110 for 0.77 acres. All right. So one thing too that we can do is I'm going to do some math here. All right. So if I go 110 divided by price per acre, 0.0000 by 0.77. So if I go 110,000, divide that by 0.77. So literally going to go price per acre. So divide that by that. That gives me a price per acre of 142,000. I think that's probably a pretty close comp. So we're gonna write that down. 142K for that one. Let's take a look here, maybe a few others. This one, maybe not necessarily so bad. Let's try that. 105 divided by 0.64. Now these are smaller. This one's 164,000 per acre. Let's see. Let's see what this one is. Another one in the Grand Highlands area. That's a gorgeous view. This one might also too be another really good comp in here. All right, so 207 divided by 1.24. That's 167,000, excuse me. So we kind of have a little bit of an idea behind that. Another way that we can also, so we kind of got a little idea of how much it's going to cost. These are probably our closest comps because I don't think it's going to be 40,000. I think it's going to be a little bit more than that. But we can get a general idea of how much it costs. Now, there's another way to do this as well. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to try and get all these parcels in through here. All right, so now you can see all my parcels over here. And then there's what's called a Pebble, I think it's called a Pebble Analyzer. But essentially what it is it's a Chrome extension. It's a little piece of software that you can essentially download in your Google Chrome browser. And what you can do is you can click on it. And what it'll do is if I hit save all, if it'll allow me, save all. Why is this not working? Of course it's not working here. But essentially what it does though is it essentially takes all of these and then it gives you the price. Classic. Of course, it's not working right now. But essentially what it does is it will give you, it'll categorize all of those and how much price per acre. So we did a manual comp, right, where we had 142,000, 142 plus 164 plus 167. We had average price per acre was about 157. All right, so 157. So essentially, I took those three price per acres that we looked at, divide those by three. That's a rough average is 157 per acre. This Pebble Pricer tool, if hopefully it'll work next time. But essentially, all you do is you hit save here, and then it gives median price per acre, average price per acre, and that will help you determine a little bit more about it. This is obviously like the manual way that you can do it. So when we look at that, we start looking at 160,000 and we said it was 157,000 per acre and we have 1.1 acres. So no surprise, they're pretty much at market value here, which is also explains why they're probably getting so much traction is because they're at market value. People are probably thinking that they'll be able to kind of negotiate a little bit lower because it is listed right at market value to try and get a little bit of a better price. But this gives you a better idea though. This particular parcel was listed at market value. My guess is that this is a land investor or somebody who bought this and then essentially is selling it on seller finance or double close or whatever, is trying to sell it themselves first before listing it with an agent. So just my guess. If anyone wants to call tomorrow, feel free. Here's the phone number. And check and see if I'm right. But that would be my guess based on the description, all the photos, all the detail, and everything like that in there. That would be my guess. So that's kind of the quick, I call it quick and dirty way to essentially list or take a look at a property and see if it's roughly the correct price. So this is interactive, guys. Please, I don't want to talk the whole time. Does anyone have any questions about that or like specifics about how I came up with that number? Obviously, this one's kind of boring because it is actually listed at the price at list price. However, certainly beneficial to see kind of like a really good posting.
Yeah, that's so I have the 8 acres. The question, the one the that we were talking about.
Yeah.
That one's because there is no pictures. It doesn't show. There's no like lot line that shows like a box or whatever. There's not a lot of
Hmm.
information. All the agent said was like, so it backs up to a national park, and
Ooh,
so there's not a
nice.
lot of like development. I think that can because they applied. They wanted to do tiny homes, and then the city or whatever county denied them the permits for that.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, there's an existing house that needs to be torn down. So that tells me
Okay.
that there are probably utilities and things like that that a house needs. But
Yes.
that's about as
Yes.
far as we're under contract. They accepted like a low cash offer.
Okay.
Uh, so I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. I don't do a whole lot of, I wasn't even gonna go forward with them, but they accepted the cash offer and I didn't expect that. So I just still be too
You're like,
high.
oh crap, but also too great.
Exactly.
Okay. Awesome. Do you want me to look it up or do you want to just talk in generics here? I mean, you
Yeah,
have
no,
it under contract, but it's up to you.
yeah, I'm down. We can talk about it. It's the address is 4270.
Hmm.
And it's Klondike with a K, like the Klondike bar,
So
and that's it. Yep,
that's it.
yep,
Sweet. Cool. Awesome. Cool. So you guys have this under contract.
yep.
Awesome. Total rehab on a beautiful borders Arabia National Mark. All right. Let's just read about this a little bit. Seller open to considering owner financing, purchase options. You guys obviously got to add a cash price, which is great.
Yeah, but it's nice if we need to pivot, we can if like our cash is too high or something.
Yeah, 100%. Perfect for a family compound. Great. Awesome. Located near subdivision where homes are 600, 800. Okay, cool. And listed by Joyce Jones. Awesome. Cool. So this is the only picture that they have.
Yep,
All right. No wonder it's been sitting on the market for a little while.
exactly.
Uh, All right. Cool. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So is this then all the national forest back here? The national
I
park?
yeah, I think that dark
Yeah.
green, I would imagine. Yeah.
National Heritage Area. Okay, cool. Awesome.
In my mind,
So,
like, oops,
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
I was
ahead.
thinking like exit strategies. I was trying to like think because I was not like putting myself in like you said the buyer's shoes. So I was like, well, who would want to
Mhm.
buy this? And I was thinking maybe it could be like a Christmas tree farm or like a wedding venue type thing. Those are like the two that pop. Or like she mentioned like primitive camping. You could do that. I just don't know how big the buyer pool is for that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So, wedding venue, the buyer pool is going to be much smaller, right? Just because purely because the amount of people who want to deal with brides, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but
Perfect.
purely the number of people who want to deal with brides is much lower, right, than the people who will go out and buy a piece of land and live on it or do something else with it. Um, cool. So when we look at this, it's what I call a cigarette lot. right? Meaning that it's just like long and skinny, right? And you can see all the cigarette lots here, right? Some counties don't allow that. Obviously, this county does. And it looks like it backs up to this looks like it's like rock. It looks like rock in there. Cool. So when you look at this, wedding venue is going to be really challenging because it's probably not large enough. How many acres is it?
8 or just under 8.
Okay. Yeah, 7.96. Yeah. So that's going to be harder because normally you're going to want something a little bit more spread out. Now, you could potentially build like a wedding venue like here, and then people can kind of flow back here and have parking up here. That's going to be all dependent on zoning, right? You mentioned tiny homes. They tried to do tiny homes, and that was a no-go.
Right.
Tell me about that.
I don't know much about it. I asked the agent if she had any like support, like any kind of documents that she could send me, and she said she doesn't really have much to send me. It was something like, there was an existing house and she applied to do tiny homes and she didn't say why. She's like, I don't even know why they denied it, but they weren't able to do it.
Okay. Did you call the county at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. I would call the county and just ask them, be like, hey, like I'm looking at this parcel and I'm interested in potentially putting some tiny homes on it. What do you say? Kind of thing. We can also too, like, do you know what the zoning is on it?
I'm not sure of the zoning.
Okay. Let's take a look. The
If they
call.
won't allow tiny homes, I wonder if they would allow RVs.
Hmm, maybe.
Yeah,
Because,
certainly can. Let's see here. Oh, there's Miss Joyce.
That's her.
Perfect. All right. Cool. So let's look up, let's say zoning in here. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. All right.
Their prop stream or something like that.
Yeah, I mean I have Land Insights and Land Portal. Just these are gonna live on YouTube, so I don't wanna blow people's information all over the interwebs. So let me see if we can go zoning map. Let's see if we can do this the good old GIS way, the old school way.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's try data. Take a stat. Nope, that's not going to be it. Um, PDF maps. Let's try that. You know what? Why don't we use AI?
When in doubt.
When in doubt, use AI. What is the zoning
do something. Do
for
something.
and then the address? I've got the address. Can you guys see my screen or no? You guys
Yep.
can only you can't
Yep.
see the AI, can you?
Well, on Deal Sauce it says R85, so we can cross check
Oh,
with
perfect.
or AI.
Okay. What did they? R85?
Yeah.
See what that says. Residential medium lot, single family detached dwellings. So that's probably why.
They couldn't do the tiny homes.
Yep. Yep. So that residential medium lot, it looks like I'm not familiar with this county, but it looks like they'll allow a second structure here. So ADU, but obviously it has to be kind of within, sounds like
So all of the
strict
eight
supplemental designs. Yeah, go ahead.
so with all of the 8 acres you can only have one home and a ADU. Wow.
Yep. Yep. And then short-term rentals, because sometimes that's another option, like if you're doing that. Allowed as an accessory use, but strict operating and permitting compliance apply. So pretty much just means that like they do allow them, however, it's probably a permitting process. There's probably a little bit of red tape to get something like that. Um, but yeah, let me just double check and make sure AI says the same thing. Yeah, R85. Well, R85 is a low density residential zoning district intended primarily for single family detached homes. The district generally requires relatively large lots compared to most suburban zoning categories. So kind of like what you're saying, we're like, oh man, only two things, but almost 8 acres. So it looks like that's kind of where it's at. Here we go. Important caveat. The current listing remarks repeatedly state that the property's zoning allows tiny homes and may support a family compound or multiple dwelling concept. So, because that is in the listing, I would say it's worth a call to the county. Just go call the county zoning. Um, let's get the phone number for you. And that way you can just take it down right now. There you go. But that would be my next call in this case, would be to the zoning. Can you see that? It's 404-687-3700.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so that would be my next call. I would call the county and try and see what they have with zoning and see if what they're talking about here is truly like you can have a family compound. Do they just say family compound because the acreage is large enough, or do they actually say family compound because you can have large enough, or because you can have multiple structures on there? It sounds like it's probably more, I mean, I'm probably more inclined to trust Google than Miss Joyce here, who didn't really put in a whole lot of effort into the listing
Right.
by just doing one photo. Um, But that would be my guess. And obviously, like here too, the front yard, side yard, rear, these are setbacks. These are really important questions to ask too, because then that way you can note, sorry guys, is that really small? Is
Oh,
that
that's too
better?
small.
No,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Okay. All right, sorry. I have it on big screen up above, so I'm sure it probably looks really small for you guys. So if that's the case, please let me know. I'll blow it up. Now I feel like I'm like partially blind, but that's all right. Um, But that's also too what I would look at when looking if you're going to call the county too in the zoning, I would ask them about utilities as well. So I would ask them about, hey, are there, do you see any water close by? Do you see electric? Is the sewer? Is it city sewer? Is it a well? Is it a septic system? Start asking about all those utilities as well. You're on the phone with them. If you guys, you might as well ask them all these questions behind that as well, and see if you can just dig out more information on that particular lot. It looks like it's a cool little lot. The biggest challenge is like it's probably going to be more for a homesteader than anything else. And I don't know how much road frontage that is, but somebody definitely came in and bought, I bet they bought one, two, three, four, five, six. I bet they bought these six and just went subdivided all of them. So that would be my guess, but I would say homesteader is probably going to be your best. That's probably going to be like your biggest exit strategy or your best exit strategy. Yeah, there are some kind of nice houses over here. There's even one for sale, which is good, but obviously this is in a suburban lot or a little bit more of like a small subdivide. Big old mansion over here. Um, but yeah, you can kind of get a good idea though of that price point. Have you looked into like price points for homes or anything like that, or have you ever run math like that where you start looking, okay, this makes sense at this buy price because then houses are going to be roughly this, it costs roughly this for construction. Have you looked into any of that before?
I have another deal that's just a slab. And so I did start kind of looking into, I was using ChatGPT and also just trying to like underwrite. And I was trying to see like how much does it cost to build a home in this area? And I was using ChatGPT. I don't know how accurate they are, but he is it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It helps to give you a good cost estimate too, right? One thing that you can do if it's, I mean, if you're gonna work in a certain county over and over and over again, I'd highly recommend going and reaching out to like a local builder because that local builder and just be like, hey, I'm interested in possibly, I have this piece of land, I'd love to either build something on it or partner on it with you. What's your guys' cost basis? Where are you at? If we were to just sell it straight to you, how much would it, what's your approximate like you can even ask them like, hey, what's your price range? Like how much are you willing to pay for what type of lot? Or you say, hey, I have this lot, if we want to build I would look like in this case, for example, it's just, oh, that's a nice house. Really nice house. Brick. Um, so for this house, 3,200 square feet, it's a decent size home. And I would just say, hey, it's 3,200 square feet. I want to build roughly a 3,000 square foot house because that's kind of what fits in the neighborhood there. Um, oh, shoot. And I would just ask them, what's your price per square foot? And once you figure out their price per square foot, right? So like let's say it's I'm just gonna make this up. Let's say it's 200, right, per square foot, right? That's gonna be really high there because if you want 3,000 square foot house, you're gonna be at 600,000. And
right,
that's before you even buy the lot, right? So now you're gonna buy, I don't know what you have under contract for or what you're planning on selling it, right? We'll just say you're gonna sell it for 285, what it's listed for, right? So now you have add 285,000 on top of it and you're at 885. I always look around and I go, this is much less $300,000 house, 300, $200,000 house. No one's going to want to build an $800,000 house in a $300,000 neighborhood,
right.
right? So I would go, okay, cool. You want to do 3,000 square feet, right? We need to be probably at like $100 per square foot, right? Roughly $300,000 per square foot, right? And then plus 285, right? So now all of a sudden you're at 585. You're starting to kind of blend in with the locals, right? And have still some buffer room on that. So I did that. I did it again. So that's kind of how I would start looking at figuring out what like approximately what's gonna fly and what's not, and how to tell too if your contract price is appropriate or not, right? If you're like, oh man, I have it under contract, I'm just gonna throw out a number, I don't know what it is. I have it under contract for 225,000, right? Taking a total guess here. I hope you got it for maybe a little bit less, but we'll see, right? But 225,000, right? And then let's say it's gonna be 300,000 to build, right? To build that home. And that is at their cost. And then you're going to split profits on the back end, right? Now you need to build in buffers and all sorts of stuff within there. And that gets to be obviously a little bit more complicated. Um, but the nice part is that you do have a house here. So you would have to essentially take that down, but then you probably have a foundation or at least ties and everything like that in there. So, the utilities are probably already pulled there, which is really good. However, you still need to figure out what that build price is and then see if you can find a buyer or builder who's willing to do that. So, a little bit more challenging when you just really have like one exit strategy on it. Not impossible by any means. Like you can certainly, take it and go. And, if you gave them a really low cash offer and they took it, like, give it a stab at it for sure. I don't know if it's a signable contract or not, but I would at least take a stab at it and start reaching out to some builders, start talking to the zoning, the county on like, hey, like what can we do here? I know it says this, but are we able to do this? Are we able to do tiny homes? Are we able to put some RVs on there? My guess is that if there's a $700,000 house down the street and some five, $600,000 houses, they're probably not going to be a big fan of RVs there. You
That's
know,
true.
just just from a generalization standpoint, nor is somebody going to want to buy that house, right? But I guess that's not really your problem, but but that's another piece of it. I would look and try and look into possibly some builders, possibly starting to maybe throw that on Facebook Marketplace or something like that to try and find some buyers in there.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's helped a lot.
Yeah. Does that give you some kind of more actionable steps where you can kind of start at least going and taking the next step in the next couple days to try and sort that all out?
Yeah, absolutely. Before it was kind of like, I don't know what we could do with this land. I don't even know if it's a deal. I don't know what could even be done. So now it's all kind of consolidated into I can wrap my head around it and I have steps now. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How long do you have that contract for?
I think 14 more days.
Ooh,
Yeah,
gotta
gotta
go.
gotta get working.
Gotta go. Well, cool. Well, keep me posted on it. I definitely want to hear about it and let me know if you guys close or what you guys decide on. I would start, if you have 14 days, I would just start calling builders left, right, and center.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna get
I
my
would call them, be like, hey, I got this deal, I got this piece of land, like, do you want it? Here's my price, see what they say and just kind of go from there. And if they say no, that's fine. Gather all the info and intel of what they are, and then you can start keeping like a Rolodex of people to help you with essentially like if this comes up again.
Yeah, well, and ironically, on the Facebook group, someone had like commented saying they're looking for, a couple acres for their own family that they want to buy in South. This isn't South Georgia, but they said South Georgia. They might be open to it. They want seller
Hmm.
financing, so they might be a potential buyer if we can pivot to seller finance.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other piece of it too, if you're up against 14 days and this person really wants to get rid of this and you think that you can still make it happen or you're getting good enough traction on it, I would try and do a seller finance and I would try and see if they would be open to deferring payments for like 2 months or so and see where that gets you, right? Because then you don't have to commit the entire amount of money to it. And you can still see where, you might have to give a little bit of a down payment, right? Depending on how desperate they are or how much they want to get rid of it or if they care or don't care or whatever it is. And then, try and set up some sort of deal where it's like, hey, I'll give you, X number of dollars per month after this date and see if they'll take that and potentially offer, maybe a slightly higher purchase price I mean, pitch it at whatever you have it under contract for first. If they don't go for that, then maybe bump your total purchase price up if you think that you can still sell it. Or if you're getting some people who are kind of interested in it. Otherwise, I mean, there's so many different things, so many different ways that you can go about it. But seller finance not inherently a bad deal. It is close to Atlanta, like it's not that far away from Atlanta. So
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
love it.
We'll see.
Yeah, good luck. Keep us posted. Let me know if you need any other help or any other questions on it too. I'd be happy to answer anything.
Cool. I appreciate it. I will.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a few more people have entered in here. Does anyone else have any questions right off the bat here that I can answer? Otherwise, I mean, we can keep talking about some other things too.
So when you're looking on Zillow like that, I know that you said you
Mhm.
mentioned you have land insights and land whatever I forget the other one,
Portal.
land
Mhm.
portal. But have you had much luck off of the owner for sale by owner off of Zillow, or is it seems like it would be a pretty high lot of eyes on it. And then also people kind of if they're on Zillow already, they might know like, okay, here's what the market's doing, and I want to price it, accordingly.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I think that I want to say it depends, but I think it's probably one of two things that happen, right? Number one, the seller has just an astronomically high number in their mind, parcel is worth $1 million. You're like, it's
Sure.
5 acres, it's not worth $1 million. It's 5 acres out in the middle of nowhere, it's not worth $1 million. Or they have it on there and they have it just as a high price point, and you call them and they're like, "Oh, well, I mean, I don't know, I just posted it and it's whatever, you know." And well, you have it posted for $1 million. I don't want to insult you with a low offer, but are you willing to, take something quite a bit lower?
Mm,
And half the time they'll say, "No, kick rocks. I want my price. I want my price. I'll just wait and sit on it forever." Or they'll say, "Yeah, I'm open. Shoot me an offer." And normally it's literally those exact words, that exact intonation. They just don't care. They just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Shoot me an offer, right? And sometimes they will take it, right? Like, Ellie just mentioned, like through a low cash offer and then boom, all of a sudden, oh, crap. I wasn't expecting this. Now what? Kind of thing. So I think it's hit and miss. And it's when you hit, you hit. When you miss by a long shot. And I think there's not a whole lot of like middle ground in between the two, at least not what I've seen. I think it's more like, yes, like, holy cow, this is a great deal. It's listed for 300,000 and you got under contract for, 100,000 because that's actual like value of it.
mm.
Or I have it for 300,000. I won't take a penny under 300,000. You know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit? I
Mm.
think it's hit and miss on Zillow. Just like homes are, just like, any other piece of real estate that you're looking for.
Yeah, it seems like
Um,
it's kind of like do your own due diligence and then throw out the offer and see, and then on to the next thing.
yeah. Yeah. And essentially, I mean, with like these type of listings, it's probably like throw out an offer and see if they bite. And if they bite, okay, awesome. Like then you're in LA situation where it's like, okay, let's go. Or,
Hmm.
if they don't, then it's like, okay, no problem. Like no big deal, go through it and whatever. And if you
Follow
don't
up on
know
the
the
phone.
if you don't know appropriate offer too, like that's totally fine. Like I know, we've gone back and forth on a few different pieces. You can just send it over. I'm happy to talk to them. And, if you just talk to them and say, hey, are you open to a much lower offer?
Hmm.
Or, if you can kind of do the kind of quick comp, kind of like what we showed earlier, and
Yeah.
you just like throw it on there and, okay, cool. It's about this, and just be like, hey, would you be willing, see your lands for 300,000. I think, I would have to come in at a significantly lower number. Would you be open to this? Okay. Yeah, you are. Great. Awesome. Cool. Do you mind if, my partner or whatever, you want to say, is able to, give you a shout maybe in the next day or two,
Yeah.
or, tomorrow or whatever. And most of the time, if people are open to taking a much lower price like that or price that's actually relatively reasonable, then they're going to be open to taking that phone call as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested because I sent in that one from Tennessee and Dunlap. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it too. It's the no zoning,
This
no
one.
restrictions, basically. No, not that
Not this
one.
one, the different one.
It was a different one. No, that
Okay.
one was, yeah, that was the one with the creek bed through it, and then you can't really do anything with it except just build on it, I feel. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's actually a really good case. That's why I kind of had it preloaded if no one
okay,
had a question for it. But
we can talk about that one too.
I want to talk about that one.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And
And
then
I
I'll
didn't,
get you the loom on the other one too.
yeah, because I didn't get a chance to watch the Loom on this one yet. So I'd be interested to hear what you say.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So we'll talk about this one here, and if people have questions, by all means, please, please, please shout out your questions. All right. So Seth brought this one, and was calling on it. It is $1.2 million for 9.64 acres. So it is a high purchase price, or what would be considered pretty high purchase price for 10 acres. I'm just going to give you guys a little idea of where it is. So it is right outside of Nashville. So if any of you guys know Nashville, Brentwood, Franklin, this whole
College.
area in here is super expensive, but it's also too moving like crazy. So not inherently a bad parcel by any means. Um, cool. So you can tell this one, the original thought process on this one was a subdivide. So the goal of a subdivide, if you don't know what a subdivide is, essentially you take a piece of land and you can chop it up into smaller sections to make it a little bit more affordable for different homes and essentially more people to buy. So when a parcel like this has one and is on a corner and it has multiple road frontages, that's really normally a really good piece to be able to subdivide. Now, do you have to have road frontage on multiple sides? No. However, if you can, great, awesome. It will only help. So thought process here was, hey, what if we can kind of like split it like right down the middle here or something and essentially get two homes on this, right? Then that $1.2 million, that might actually be a really good buy if you can split it in half and you can sell each of them for 800,000. Now you're at $1.6 million, right? And if you bought it for 1.2, you have a great profit margin potentially, right? Now, there's work that has to go into subdividing for sure. There's money that has to go into the project in order to make it that way, right? So it's not a pure profit, but it's something though that is a potential. And that's kind of was the thought process on this parcel. So they actually did a really good job because they drew out it's 679 feet on one side, and then it's 360 feet of road frontage on the other. So the plan originally here was to kind of subdivide it in some way, shape, or form where we would get two parcels out of it. And this county, Seth found out that this county essentially allows for subdivisions, but it has to be 5 acre lots. So it is 9.64 acres, which is like,
Oh, so close.
so close to being so good. Um, because when we look at that 9.64 acres, obviously it's under 10. Anytime it's under that, they're either going to immediately say no because they're really strict on their rules, or it's going to be a lot of paperwork and a lot of convincing to try and massage to try and get that to go through, right? So kind of interesting, right? Because I was like, well, like look at this. This one, like that's a small lot right there, right? Like that's just a small house right in there, and you know,
He,
small house there, small house there.
the realtor told me that that was like a new ordinance that was just happening like the last like 6 or 8 years or something like that. So it's
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, right. So that's another really good point, right? Is that you can grandfather in old parcels, right? So my guess is that a lot of people have been flocking to these areas, which we know is true, right? Outside of Nashville, lots of people really like it. And so they're chopping these up into small, like 1 acre parcels, right? And so trying to give that 5 acre gives the community either maybe a little bit more rural feel or kind of keeps it with what the land originally was, whatever the county decides. It can certainly be it can certainly be something to like note when you're
Mhm.
starting to call this. So this looked really good. The challenging piece was that that parcel on there, it can't be subdivided. So we're like, okay, well, let's take a look and see what what the normal price of that is. And so let's see here. Let's go into that area. College Grove, right? Isn't that what it said?
Yeah.
Grove. Sweet. Okay, cool. So let's get some filters. We'll go to 20 acres, which is a little bit high, but if you get just 10, it's going to count out like 12 acres and that kind of thing. And then we're going to go 12 months, which is fine. And then we're going to go sold. So now we can kind of see what's all been sold around there. Let me see where in College Grove it is too. Because there's some really good comps right around it, if I remember right. Oh, it's more in Arno? Arno. Okay, cool. So here's the comp that I was looking at. So here's also another really good reason why, man, I wish we could subdivide that. Because 5 acres is going for $1 million. So if you can get that 9.64 and you could split it into two, that would be potentially $2 million. That would be a great great profit on that one. That would be wonderful. However, the county's probably going to be pretty dang strict. Um, still might be worth, I mean, still might be worth the phone call into them to at least see, but you can kind of see here again, another, it looks like it's a little bit more of, I don't want to call it like a cul-de-sac, but a little area there. Some pretty nice homes, a little small abode there. Um, but yeah, it looks like this is kind of like a rough rendering. Of course, Porsche in the garage. Um, but something like this, though, obviously this would be great. Let's see what it closed for. $1 million listed for sale. Now it took 2 years to sell, but it did sell for the full $1 million. So my guess is that that's probably a home developer. Yeah, they're going to put a $2.5 million house on there. So maybe even more. Oh, that's just another parcel. Oh, that's a full 40 acres. All right. So I digress. So for these 40, for this acreage here, let's see if this isn't going here. The good and the bad, right? So now the good is that there's a lot of different, why is this? Let's see if I can refresh this here, guys. Sorry about that. Um, you can see too over here, like these are houses, right? $5 million house on 5 acres. Here's another house, 3 acre or 5 acres for 3 million, right? Now you can kind of start seeing, okay, this looks like it's more lots in through here, very nice lots, right? Now these are only $500,000. So there's a wide discrepancy. Here's 600,000 for 7 acres, 500,000 for 5 acres. That's 100,000 an acre. That's pretty easy math. Here's a 751. This one looks really nice. That's a beautiful area. Yeah. So here's one. So there's a lot of different things that are kind of going on here. We know that our house is right here, and let's just have a look here. So here's where that one is. Right next to it's $1 million for 6.5 acres,
Hmm.
right? So 9 acres, 6 acres. Here's eight, almost 9 acres is 1.15. So at 1.2 million, they're probably really close to what market value is on there. I would say market value is probably from 1.1 to, or probably from 1 million to 1.3. So they're probably pretty dang close. Here's a lot, but it's not quite as desirable. See how it's that kind of skinny lot again?
Hmm.
So skinnier lots, not quite as desirable. I mean, still 5 acres going for 850,000. So it's not like it's not like it's a bad chunk of land by any means. But you can see though, there's already been a price cut on there. 139 days, 100 views, 14 saves. So I know we talked about earlier, right? That golden ratio. However, it's been on the market for 139 days. That other one had more views and more saves in 3 days, right? That other one that we looked at. So just certain things to kind of take a peek at. This one, in terms of price point, we would have to get it down quite a bit in order for it to make sense, just because of holding costs and buying something this expensive when it's not a subdivide like this would have a high holding cost. Now, if we could subdivide it, that holding cost 100% would be worth it, right? The challenging piece is that it's just that barely that short. And I also tried to look on and see if there's any way where we could get a little bit more from the neighbors, right? See if like you can buy that point 0.4 acres,
Yeah.
right? Here's the challenge that this tree line, they probably don't want to give up any of that tree line. Over here is a creek, so it's a pretty easy, like there's a creek that kind of runs through here, and then there's another creek that actually runs through here. So you could maybe get a little bit more out here, but that would require this landowner to be willing to give you that. You'd have to sell it, partition it out, and then attempt to essentially merge the two, which doesn't really happen all that well. And then you have to convince the city, even after you merge, that you want to subdivide this now into a lot of red tape. A lot of
It
red tape.
sounds like a lot of
And
costs too that you have to like carve that out. You probably have to get it surveyed, right? And then they have to partition it out, and then the merging would have to cost you something, and then for
100%.
for what cost at what cost?
Yeah, and they probably wouldn't even allow you to merge it, right? Like they would probably just plat it out as a separate parcel that's owned by the same person. And
Right.
so then you'd have to try and attempt to explain that to them and then try and have them get that grandfathered in or give a loophole of a rule to try and allow them to do that. So really, really tough to try and be able to get that nailed down. Not impossible. Well, maybe impossible, but
Or yeah, or do you just say on to the next one?
probably on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
Would this potentially, I mean, I mean, I know you sent it in, Seth, so I mean, I'll give them a call tomorrow and I'll just call the county and be like, hey, I'm looking at this parcel, would it, I know, the county rule says, 5 acre per, would there be any way that we could get an exemption for this?
Does the county like once you get like the stamp of approval from a county on something like that, is there a time where you could be a little bit like, okay, we're moving forward with it, and then they retract that later, or is it once it like is there a risk of that at some point?
Um, yes, I say
Okay.
that hesitantly because every county is so different.
Yeah.
Especially once you start getting out into rural America, every county is way different. Some people are like super chatty and will tell you exactly what to do and how to do it. And then other people are like mad at life and
At the world.
just not having it, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
had a bad day. And sometimes, I've talked with people who, are having a bad day and then I call them back, a day later and they're like super chippy and tell me everything.
Hmm.
So oftentimes it just really depends on who you're talking to and kind of what they say. Some are really hard and fast on rules, other are more lenient depending on like what your intention of it is and how you want it to be zoned and all that type of stuff.
Hmm.
This would have to be one where it's just like, hey, this is kind of my intention for this piece of land. You know, would there, I know it says 5 acres, is that a hard and fast rule, or is there ways where you would possibly give an exemption?
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, well, I'm just going to play this out, role play it out, right? So if they say no, well, okay, no problem. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, blah, blah. If they say, well, maybe, potentially, and then you go, okay, great, awesome. What do I need to submit to you in writing to get some sort of pre-approval for this?
Hmm.
And then, you would essentially have to try and provide that into a pre-approval um, and see if you can get a pre-approval. Sometimes they will just say, no, you need to submit the whole survey packet, subdivide packet, and then we'll decide.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll give you kind of like a, well, if you did it like this, we'd probably say yes, but if you did it like that, we wouldn't, and so sometimes they'll kind of cue you in into like what you can and can't do, and then other times they won't. And so
Yeah.
it's really hard to say. I wish I had like a better answer besides like it's totally county dependent.
Sure.
Um, but it's one of those though where, we look at it and we go, oh, maybe this is kind of a cool, I mean, you know, the money potentially could be there, from an investor standpoint. However, also it's going to be probably 1.2 million. They're probably not going to push much off of that purchase price because that's
Yeah,
kind of what
I
market value is.
Yeah, I forget how long it's been on, but it's in a trust. The family is like whatever we want what we want. So, they're not really they're not really looking to if they sell it, great. If they don't, whatever. And then the other thing too that I thought was kind of interesting was that might make things difficult, even if you got the blessing, you got the subdivide okay from it, is the direction that that creek runs through it is it kind of it makes it a little bit of an awkward divide uh,
Yeah.
straight through it. So even if you can divide it in half, it's like where's the building opportunity? Like how would you do it to make sure that you get enough building
Yeah.
opportunity for?
I'm gonna stop my share here real quick. I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna hide their names. So
Hmm.
just give me 1 second. I'm gonna hide their names. And then there's kind of a cool drawing tool. So let me just pull this up super quick because I don't want to pull up their names. Let me get rid of owner name in there. Cool. All right. So let me go back and share my screen again. All right, cool. Can you guys see this now?
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So here it is.
Hmm.
Here's this portion of it. And here we'll talk we'll pull this up. So things that we look for in due diligence, right? It would be wetland layer, right? That essentially just says like where is the ground wet. Surface water layer, which I'm not sure that's 100% accurate because it's showing surface right over the driveway, but you take it with a grain of salt. And then flood zone, right? Now, flood zone is kind of important. However, look at all these homes that are technically in a flood zone,
Hmm.
right? So if you hover it over it, you can kind of see it says 100-year flood zone, which tells me it doesn't really flood all that often, right? So, but generally speaking, if you're in a flood zone, if you build a house there, your insurance will be through the roof, right? This area has very nice bougie houses. They're probably not going to build in a flood zone just because it's not worth the risk, it's not worth the insurance cost and stuff like that. Now there are areas too where you can also they can do what's called mounding, right? Where essentially they build the house up. And so it's almost like a little mini levee system that's getting deep into the weeds, but that's kind of another way though that they can kind of get around some of that. So you can see I'm just going to leave all these layers on here. So here's one creek going straight north. Here's another creek kind of on the back side of the property. And then you have all this land out on kind of, I guess, the southeast side. That's all buildable. So
Yeah.
here's the really cool piece that I like to do. So this will essentially give us, we can essentially like draw out what it would be, right? So I'm totally guessing here. We can move these dots here in 1 second. But there's like 4.27 acres. Can you guys see
Sure.
that okay?
Yeah.
So there's 4.27 acres. Now we can draw another one, which essentially would be like the other parcel for it, right? So there's 5.21 acres, right? So you can also too like adjust these as well to try and get like what your appropriate acreage would be to try and give an idea of okay, maybe something like this way might be a better split, maybe like this. Right? 5.4. Then you can potentially put a house like right here and one right here, right? Now this person obviously has all this land back here. You could potentially cross the creek, but that would require a bridge or a culvert or something like that. And so you could potentially build out here. But this is kind of like a cool, I mean, I don't know, I like playing around with these and messing around with these, but kind of a cool little way where you can okay, what if I did something like that, right? And all of a sudden I'm getting close to like equal parcels, right? So if you can get something like close like that, maybe, right, would be a really good way where it's 4.76 acres and 4.69 acres. You can have potentially a build site here, potentially build site here, anywhere in here could be a build site. So you can kind of like mess around geometrically too and see how that would be beneficial. The other nice piece of it too is here you have 470 feet of road frontage and you have 260 feet of road frontage, 361 feet of road frontage, right? So you can every every county will have certain like here's how much road frontage you need for a subdivide. Here's how much road frontage you need. Here's your setbacks, right? Essentially, setbacks mean like if it's 50 feet off the road, the house has to be 50 feet back. It can't be 25 feet from either side of the line and maybe 100 feet in the back or whatever it is. I'm just making up numbers. But you can kind of essentially see where your roughly buildable area is. So that's honestly how I would probably partition it off. Just taking a look at that. And then if we get rid of, let's go. So then you kind of have different areas. Now, the other cool thing, I'm gonna nerd out with you guys here for a minute. Thanks for hanging around with me too. Soil maps. So if you want to get really, really in depth, all right, there's a little soil map toggle on here. When you click on the soil, oh, don't show that. So when you click on the soil, or essentially you can see, I don't know, can you guys see that? How it says Melvin Silt Loam?
Mhm.
And see how there's worth investigating and see how there's four of them there that's worth investigating. That means that the soil might not be super great.
Mm.
But then all of a sudden, when I go up here, then there's only two, right? Flooding and ponding, right? The Egum Silt Loam. Let's see what this is. See now this one, this soil, Armor Silt Loam, looks really good, right? So maybe this is where people put that house. Now, do you want to put a $4 million house right on the road? Probably not. At least I don't if I'm building a $4 million house. I want to put it back here. So I would essentially you'd have to do what's called a perk test to try and figure out where to essentially where you can build on all these sites. But it looks like all the soil is roughly the same. There might be a little bit of difference. And these are two approximations. So they don't know 100%, but this is an approximation where, if you look at it and you go, oh man, like there's a lot of different soil types in there, right? So here's some that are good, bad, in between, right? You can kind of drag over the top of all these and kind of see like different soil types and what's good and what's bad. So you can kind of start to figure out, like this has a lot of different soil types in a lot of different areas. See how crazy that map looks? Almost looks like a topographical map. Versus if you go and like normally in like the Midwest, it tends to be much more blockaded, larger chunks of the same type of soil. So that also too is probably more due to like mountains and other contour lines that have happened over time versus this is Midwest. There just wasn't as much movement. So geog tectonic plate movement, but um, yeah, so this is kind of what I would look for at this and go, okay, hey, like this soil looks overall pretty dang good. So like that's really good. Let's take that off because that's kind of a crazy layer to look at all the time. This is kind of how I would imagine kind of partitioning that off or
Mhm.
splitting it up into two sections if we could. And that would kind of be like my next question for zoning, for the county zoning would be like, hey, I have a 9 point whatever,
6'4".
9.64 acre parcel here. Is there any way that I can, potentially split it up into two parcels that would be 4.7 and 4.76 roughly, is that an option or is it hard 5 acres and go, right? But that might be worth looking at. And also too, I mean, if you have I mean, me personally, I would want this one. I'd want this lot. I'd want to build my house like right about here. Um, however, though, this lot's really nice. If you could build back here, this thing would be awesome. You have two creeks on either side, beautiful. Clear out some trees in here, but still keep some here. You could have a really pretty creek on both sides. You can have a really pretty area there. Um, Otherwise, too, I mean, a house right here and then be able to meander back into the woods might be kind of cool too. But that would be my like personal analysis of it. I don't know if there's anything else that you could really do with that. Um, beyond there, it seems like they're probably pretty savvy. So, I wouldn't necessarily like alert the agent that that you'd subdivide it or that you got approval or potential approval to subdivide it on there. I'm not necessarily sure I would do that, but just because, sometimes they'll take your idea and go with it, and it's like, well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? They own the property, they have every right to do whatever they want with it. The challenging piece is as an investor, sometimes, you're like, well, shoot, like I came up with that idea, like, you know, but also too, it's just, I always tell people too, like you might also want to put in, like if you're going to buy this for 1.2 million, you also might want to put in there that there's a clause that says that, you can't close unless you get fully approved and like stamped, signed, recorded for a subdivide. Sometimes that's an option too. Like I just put in an offer on a parcel today, actually. That is a subdivide, And I just said, hey, here's my purchase price, here's my down payment, here are my terms, XYZ. It's a seller finance offer. And it is also subject to approval for minor subdivide. So there are a lot of different ways where you can go about trying to do something like that. It all just depends on, your viewpoint on the seller and on the agent if it's on market and whatever. This particular case that I had, it's in Indiana. It is on market, and the seller just wants to, he's old, he's retired, he doesn't want to subdivide it himself, and so we'll see kind of how where it lands here. I'll hopefully know in the next couple days. But yeah, so it all just kind of depends on where people are going with it, how much they want to put into it or not put into it. I did look up this parcel. They bought it for much significantly less than what they listed it for at 1.2 million. So, they probably would go through the effort to put in the money into that, to be able to get out a much higher draw on it. But
Totally.
all just depends.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit more in depth than the Loom video that I sent you. But hopefully that'll be good here.
Yeah.
Let's see here. JP, are you still with us, JP?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm here. I was just in the shopping center. That's why I'm not showing my camera.
Oh, no, no problem, no problem. I saw that you have a question. Can I send you a link from
Oh,
Zillow and give me feedback on that piece of land? Yeah, absolutely.
either the link or I can give you the address, either or.
Do you have the address of it? I mean, either or.
Well, actually, I'm in Texas, but the address it just says 0 Jeske, Jeske Road, and then the Needville, Texas 77461.
JESK. What is it? It's
Okay.
0 JES.
K-N-E. Jeske,
JESA.
Jesk,
Okay.
and then E,
Uh-huh.
and then Needville, Texas.
Is it? What did you say that? I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you here. What was the city?
And Needville,
How do you spell that?
N-E-E-D,
ED.
and then Bill. Yeah, there we go. The first one. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Cool. So what's your question on it?
Uh, I guess I just want to have an idea. Will you buy something like that if you were looking at it? Because it's like I'm live technically next to that land, but I just want like kind of feedback. What would you look into something like that? Like if let's say you were an investor, would that
Yeah.
be something you would buy?
Yeah, let's take a look at it here. All right. So when we take a look at it, 45, one save, superb location, no HOA, no mud tax. Well, that must be something local. Farming
Probably.
ranching community. I'm not familiar with that, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's something that flew totally off my head. I'm not super familiar with Texas. Let's see here. All right. Cool. So it looks like they partitioned kind of off that little section there for their driveway compared to the road on it. Cool. So if I look at this, right, and I see, okay, there's some farms around it. Oh, there's a little subdivision there. All in through there. There's some dirt, all that fun stuff in there. Let's take a look at it here. All right, Needville. Check out Needville, Texas. Just gonna pull up a second one here. And I'm gonna pull up land. Oh man. All right. How many acres was that? 17?
I think 17. Yeah.
awesome. 10 to 20. Ooh, nothing is sold last
I
12
think the
months.
same guy sold the house that is next to it, and I think it's the same owner, and it was also like 10 acres with the house.
Oh, yeah, and I forgot Texas is a non-disclosure state. So here's the really ch the challenging piece with Texas, right? Is that if I click on it, it doesn't tell me what it sold for, right? So even in 2025, sold doesn't tell you, right? So now we can guess pending for sale versus, what it actually sold for. We can kind of take a guess on that, but it's really hard to comp in Texas and in non-disclosure states. And also too, there's like nothing that is sold around there. Here's a few that
Yeah,
are for sale. Obviously, there's the one. It looks like it's potentially in a
It's
sub.
crazy.
So let me ask you this, JB, what would be your exit strategy on it? What are you thinking for exit strategy?
well, I guess one of the other questions would be like divided in like maybe 1 acre lots and try to make a somewhere in the middle, like a street or something like that, and try to sell the lots. So I guess one of the questions that I have is if I'm not fully the owner of the lot, let's say I go with seller finance, can I still do that? I guess that's a question that I has come through my mind. Like, can I still divide it even though I'm not clear on the lot? Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So great question. So yes and no. All right. So can you do that? Yes. It's called a land contract. I believe in land contract, and they call it something else as well. But yes, you can essentially do that, where essentially you seller finance it, and it gives you all the rights to do whatever you need to on that land. So you can subdivide it, you can put in whatever. You essentially own the land, but you don't, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yes, there is a way that you can do that. Now, the biggest thing that you're going to run into is if you do so there's two different types of subdivides. There's what's called a minor subdivide and a major subdivide. All right. And
Hmm.
then there's also what's called an entitlement. And so a minor subdivide is essentially where you take a parcel of land and you just chop it up into sections and you just let it be, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like what we just described with that Tennessee one, right? Where essentially, hey, we're not putting in any streets, we're not doing anything, we're literally just taking this piece and we're cutting it and creating two separate plots. That's considered a minor subdivide. Once you get into a major subdivide, which is now where like you put like a road, um, here like the neighbor or that neighboring subdivision. So this over here, right, where now all of a sudden you put in roads and you have houses and cul-de-sacs, right? That's considered what's called a major subdivide and an entitlement. And so an entitlement means that you're getting the entire parcel of land ready for sale, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
so that is much more involved. It's a lengthier process. For example, I have a friend who builds multifamily, and they're trying to build one in Toma, Wisconsin. And it has been 4 years for that entitlement process in order for him to be able to build his multifamily that he's going after. So,
Oh, wow.
kind of crazy when you start looking at entitlements and like building something like this out, right? Because I'm sure this was just an old piece, I'm sure this was farmland, right? And when you go
It
from
was.
farmland all the way to now entitlements, it's going to take multiple years. And so anyways, that would be something where, it would be much, much more challenging. Is it doable? Yeah, potentially. 100% potentially doable on this piece of land. It's just going to be a lot harder and it's going to take a lot longer. And also, too, oftentimes with major subdivides and sometimes even minor subdivides, uh, you also, too, have to essentially partition that or like go in front of partition it, talk about what you're going to do in front of the city, in front of the community. Sometimes there's a vote, sometimes they can turn you down. So there's a lot of risk involved with major entitlement or like a major subdivide and or an entitlement. Now,
Got
you
it.
might be able to buy it for 750K and you might be able to sell it for $2 million, but there's a lot of work and a lot of risk in between. So hopefully
Yeah,
that makes sense. Hopefully that
it,
makes
it
sense.
does.
Yeah.
It does.
So that is it possible? Like, yeah, that's a prime lot for a major subdivide or an entitlement process. The challenging piece is that it's just a lot of risk reward and it's going to be really hard. Um, you're going to have to try and find somebody who's very familiar with that process. I'm not your person on that.
Yeah,
Um, that's not my jam. Most people who do those entitlement projects, they're going to get a piece of land that's significantly larger than this and and they'll do like one, maybe two projects a year. So they're kind of going to pick their battles and then go um, on that process. But that would be something worthwhile if you're looking at like a major subdivide or an entitlement process. That would be something that would probably be pretty likely through here. A minor subdivide is going to be really tough because you have to have so much road frontage per lot. So you're going to have a really, really hard time kind of minor subdividing that.
yeah.
Yeah, just because that road frontage on there is so small.
I do see it.
Yeah. Still, I mean, not inherently like a bad option. I mean, it's not looks actually like a very nice piece of land, some trees and looks like they kind of those lines don't quite look right. Looks like they kind of carved out their driveway out of it and just trying to sell off some of this agricultural land here. But that would be my thought process. I know I see somebody in here who does ground up land development. Maybe they might have a little bit more thought process on that. But yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit, JP. I mean,
It does. It does a lot. Thanks so much.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Is that what you're looking at that one for? Would be to try and do something like that?
Well, looking into that, one of the main reasons because there is like a little more down, like they're building like 400 houses. So now I was looking just to see what would be my options regarding that land. But obviously the competition to do something like that will be higher because they just building a brand new neighborhood. They just finished doing roads. So it's just like I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, let me ask him just just in case.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd rather have you ask than not, and then, always, be wondering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So awesome. Cool. Does anyone else have any other questions? Any questions? Any questions? All right. Well, I'm going to I just put in the chat there. I just put, if you guys have a deal or a lead that you want to submit, feel free to post it in there or to submit it in there. That'll take you to a little form and it'll have everything in there. If for whatever reason you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. I'm more than happy to obviously look at it offline or whatever. Any way that I can help, just let me know. If you do put a lead in there and then we do end up closing on it, then by all means, I'll cut you guys a check. So in that form, it'll also too have your name, the seller's name, or whoever point of contact in there. So happy to help you guys however I can. Really, the goal of these office hours is more just to learn about land. I'm gonna learn something new. You guys are gonna learn something new. And also too, just to get better at underwriting, get better at comping, learn how to talk to sellers, find different exit strategies, troubleshoot things. Like I know Ellie came in and was kind of unsure about a certain parcel, so that was awesome. So being able to do things like that is really kind of the goal of this. So. Awesome. If you guys don't have any other questions, I will let you guys all go tonight. I'm gonna go have some dinner. I hope you guys do too. And I will be back for office hours on Wednesday at noon Central. So appreciate you guys showing up. Thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you guys can always also too reach out to me via the website, via email, whatever works best. So thank you guys so much. Have a good night, and I will see you guys hopefully on Wednesday. See ya.